This is Gemara in Yoma Daf Tes, the learning for this month, the month of Iyar. Ani Hashem Reifecho, all the wonderful school of Refuah should be a schos Refuah Shlema for Rivka Bas Basheva, as well as a schos Refuah Shlema for Naftali Fiba Michal Esther. The learning of the entire Chabura should be a tremendous schos Ilan Neshama. As well as today on Daf Tes, which is Tuesday's Daf, today's shir should be also a special schos Refuah Shlema for Dvaira Bas Rachel, that the surgery that on her finger should go successful. A close friend of the Daf's daughter, and Amir Hashem, she should not need any more surgeries. Of course, we can't forget the rest of our chaylim over here. Many b'mega chayim esar shom sibin reiz esar baskinanti b'sinim chaysa yishal ben chaya Yosviel b'mendel lezer person shavlei shom az namim v'shavig v'shavchad v'al davin yitri v'shmom and tiyel and chan reizim chay b'smin lebrach v'stav musa adina yidam and shenim minus v'chavim and avigal fachtim v'figel v'rod nechel yisod natel hu ma'chamendo ben toba v'soy shar chali Yisrael as well as chashidach for Atalea Basita and Menachem Mendel Ben Eli Sheva. We pick it up on the bottom of Ches Amid Beis, dealing with the word Parhedrin, the Lishkas Parhedrin. One last time, I'd like to thank everyone for all their wonderful feedback. I'm happy to hear that the summaries are aiding people in their Chazara, that it's giving people a bit more clarity. Feel free to reach out with the WhatsApp number on the screen to sign up to receive them, or they're on the website at ccdaf.org under source sheets. So we pick it up from the bottom. Tanan Hosam, 3 lines from the bottom of Chesem Beis. Hanachtoinim, loy chayavim, oisan chaychamim lahafresh. Chazal did not require the bakers to take off all the different Trumas HaMaisros. Ella, we'll explain what this means in a moment. Trumas Meiser, v'chala. Those are the only 2. This is referring to Demai. We know Demai is something which is a suffix if the appropriate Trumas and Maisros were separated, and therefore, says the Braisa, the bakers only had to take off Trumas Maiser and Chala. Just to give a quick rundown of the 6 Manas Kuna that we're discussing. Of course, we have Truma, which is 2% to Levi. We have Meiser Rishon, which is a 10th to Levi. Trumas Meiser is the 10th that the Levi gives to the Kohen. Meiser Sheni, the 10th that you eat in Yushalayim. Meiser Ani, years 3 and 6, that instead of eating that 10th in Yushalayim, you give it to the Aniyim. Chala, after you make dough out of the item, you give a piece of it to the Kohen. So we're saying now here is that when it comes to Demai, the only 2 items that you have to make sure to take off are Chala. They bake a bread, you got to take a piece to the Kohen, and Trumas Meiser, the 10th that the Levi gives to the Kohen. So now the Gemara explains that, and what this has to do with our Sugya, we'll see in a moment. We understand you don't have to give Truma Gedayla the first 2% of the Levi. Why not? The Tanya learned in the Braisa. Moving along to Tasamar Aleph. Lefi Sheshalab Chol Gvula Lefi. Because Sheshalab Chol Gvula Yisrael, they sent out to all the boundaries of Klal Yisrael. Ra. This is Yochanan Kohen Gadol. And he took a census and he realized Lefi Ra She'in Mafrishan Ela Truma Gedel Bilvat. And he saw that even the Amaratzim, of course, the Mai is an item of suffix. We're not sure if Truma Meiser were taken off because it came from an Amaretz. But even they were Makbid, they took off Truma Gedayla. So that's the reason why you don't have to think of Truma Gedayla right now. Meiser Rishon and Meiser Ani. Why do you not have to think of Meiser Rishon and Meiser Ani? The reason being, Nami Loi Hamoitz Mechaver Lavaraya. Says the Gemara very simply. We have a concept that if I have an item and you want my item, you have to bring a proof that I have to give it to you. So I have an item, the Kohen, the Levi, wants to come along and they want to say I have to give it to them, so they have to bring the burden of proof to give it to me. So I understand why Meiser Rishon and Meiser Ani we don't have to give as well. One more time. Ella Meiser Sheni asked the Gemara, what's going on? Meiser Sheni never shuv v'nesku v'nechlu b'Yushalayim. Why does he not have to take a Meiser Sheni and go up and eat in Yushalayim? So Amar Ula answers, and this is of course why the entire Brisa was brought over here. Because the officers of the king would beat them every 12 months, and they would tell them, sell for cheap, sell for cheap. So the Rabbanan did not bother them. They had mercy on them to separate Meiser Sheni. My Parhedrin is Parsi as the superintendents. So what's happening over here is, says the Gemara, because every 12 months they have these new officers like we spoke about yesterday, and they were very makbid. They used to hit them and beat them. Make sure you sell all the products for very, very cheap. Therefore, we feel bad on the baker. The baker loses his parnasa because these officers beat them and made sure they barely made a profit. Because of that reason, we're more makel on the baker, and if he has something of Demai, he does not have to give off. He does not have to eat the Meiser Sheni in Yerushalayim. Amar Rabba Bar Bar Chana Amar Rabbi Yechlan. What is the meaning of the pasuk? Yiras Hashem Taisef Yamim. The fear of God is going to add on days. Ushnois Rishayim, but the years of the evil Tikatzrena will be cut off. Yiras Hashem, the fear of God Taisef Yamim adds on days. You know that refers to Zem Mikdash Rish. That's the first base of Mikdash. Sha'amar Arba Meyois Vasim Shana was 420 years. V'loishim Shabai Elo Yod Ches Kahanim Gedolim. 18 Kahanim Gedolim for 420 years. That's obviously quite a wonderful stat. That 18, that means each Kohen Gadol work for 10, 20, 50 years. But the pasuk concludes that the years of the Rishon will be cut down. That because Sheni. That's the second base that Mikdash. It also stood for 420 years. And yet, more than 300 Kohanim in 420 years. If that's not bad enough, says the Gemara, say Mehan Memshana. Subtract 40 years. Why? Of those 420, so we're left with 380. Why? Shimon HaTzadik. Shimon HaTzadik was one of the good Kohanim during the second base of Mikdash who served for 40 years. So left with 380 years. Ushmainim Shesham Yochai Kohen Gadol. Yochai Kohen Gadol served for 80 years. Now what are we left with? 300 years. Eser Sheshim Yishmael ben Pabi. 10 of Yishmael ben Pabi. V'amli Yod Aleph Sheshim Yishmael Lazar ben Chorsam. Mikan ve'elach say v'chashav kolecha v'echel ha'azi shenasai. So if we do the math, even more than 300 Kohanim Gedolim, 420 years. We're taking of 40 years of Shimon HaTzadik, 80 years of Yochanan Kohen Gadol, comes out of each and every Kohen did not even live out his year. They did not even live for 1 year, which we're going to see, of course, later in the Masechta, the reason being, because they performed the Kmitza incorrectly. This is one of the big fights in Tzedukim, as we're going to see, and that is the first difference that the Gemara quotes to us between the first Beis HaMikdash and the second Beis HaMikdash. Of course, we got into this based off of the Parhedrin, like we saw at the end of yesterday's Shir. Now, once we're within the realm of discussing the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, on that theme, the Gemara continues. Amar Rabbi Yechlan ben Tursa, what's the reason that the Mishkan of Shilai, which stood for 369 years, why was it destroyed? There were two items, two terrible averos. Gilei Arayis, immorality, ubizayon kachim. They didn't treat karbanos properly. Gilei Arayis, how do we know that? The says in the pasuk, Veli zakin ma'id, and Eli was very old. Veshama es kol esher yasu banav, and he heard what his children were doing. L'chol Yisrael, that what his children did to all the Klal Yisrael. What his children did, and that they slept with the woman that came to the entrance of the Al Moed. Sounds like quite a dreadful Havera. Sounds like they were being mizaneh. Says the Gemara, no. And we should be a bit familiar to everyone, as we've seen this Gemara already. It's not true. They didn't actually sleep. They weren't actually mizaneh with these women that came to the Beis HaMikdash. Mitoich. So Gemara explains, what did they do wrong? Moving along to Testament Beis. Mitoich shashas kineim. These women came to bring their carbon for Yoledes, for Zava, the birds, and they did not bring the karbanis right away. Mia Maila Alein Akas of Kilu Shachvan. The Torah considers it as if they unfortunately slept with them. Basically, they prevented these women from being back with their husband as quick as possible, which in a way is a form of immorality, a form of separating husband and wife. And that was the first Aveira that the children of Eli did, which unfortunately caused the destruction of the Mishkan in Shiloh. Says the Gemara, 2 lines down, Testament Beis, Bizayin Kachim. What was the second Aveira that they did? That they didn't have the proper respect for Karbanis. That it says in the Torah. Again, about the children of Eli. One more time. Gam B'terem Yiktiron. That even before they would burn as a chayil of the fats, ba nara koyin. The koyin nara would come, and he would say to the man bringing the carbon, "To not basar litzleis the koyin. Please give me some of the beef for the koyin. The koyin doesn't want to take from you the cooked meat, kiyam chai, rather the the raw one. So we have one of the slaves, the servants of the Kehanim, going over to people bringing karbanos, asking them for the raw meat. But Yomer, and the person responds, they love, yaktiran. So he responds and says, wait, first you burn the chalef and then the kohen gets it. First burn the fats like you're supposed to, and then the kohen gets what he wants. But the servant's going to say, no, you're going to have to give me right now. And if you don't give it to me right now, I'm going to take it with force. And the sin was very great. Why? Because they disgraced the Karban Mincha of Hashem. Let's just say over what just happened. What happened was the children of Eli, these Kohanim, would have their servants to go over to people that bring karbanos. Usually the normal process is they bring the carbon, they cook the carbon, they give the kohen the fats, the limbs, etc. The kohen goes, burns what has to be burnt, gives God his portion, and the kohen takes his portion. But these servants came and said to these people, bring the carbon, we need it right now. They said, why do you need it right now? Wait till you burn it. They said, no, we need it right now. So they went and they grabbed it with them from force even before. So what's the bizayin, kachim? That they couldn't wait for God to eat. They needed their food before God got his food. Now the Gemara continues. We're on the first, we'll call it the medium-sized line on Testament Beis. Says the Gemara, Mikdash Rishon Ne'macharav. Now we further go into the destruction of the first base of Mikdash. What is the reason the first base of Mikdash was destroyed? Says the Gemara. Obviously, a bit of a famous Gemara. Then they gimel dvarim, 3 items shayubai. Avoid desire gilei rayos shvichas damim. Avoid desire they'll say where do we say sir worship the idols ki kotzer yimatzei mehish tareah. That the pasuk says the couch was too short for stretching out. My kotzer matzah l'shtaria. What does that refer to? Amar Rav Yochanan kotzer matzah zeh mehashtarer or love shnei reim kechad. This is one that it's too small to put 2 friends together. This refers to the Beis HaMikdash that it's kilu at some level too small for 2 friends, meaning it can't hold God and as well idols. That's what it means. You can't have 2 shnei reim. That's the first indication that they worship. The pasuk continues. Sarah ki his kanes, and the cover was too narrow. What does that refer to? Amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani ki matar Rav Yochanan. When Rav Yochanan came like God says, pasuk bachi Rav Yochanan started crying. Amar man dechsev bei. What does it say? It says kanes kanein me'ayam. God is so strong; He holds up all the waters of the whole world. Yet naslo masecha Sarah. But yet we see that the Masicha, that the idol became a rival at Saratim, that at some level God is bemoaning the fact I can't live together with this other person, like at Sarah, like a co-wife. I can't live with these idols. So what do we see? We see that during the first base of Mikdash, unfortunately they were worshipping idols. The first of the 3 cardinal sins, they were being Iver. Number 2 says the Gemara Gilei Rayos says the Torah. Yomer Hashem. So says God. Yan ki gavoy b'nois siyoin. Because the daughters of Sion, Batelechlan, the 2 yois, they walked with upright posture, Garain, Umashakra, Sinayim, and their eyes were gazing eyes. Holech, V'tofayf, they were going and they were floating as they walked to Lechno, Baragleim, Techasana, and with their feet they would spew venom. Now, this is a pasuk that also should sound familiar. I believe he has it in the Gemara in Shabbos. Says the Gemara, what's this pasuk referring to? Yan ki gavai b'nai Sion. The first part of the pasuk says that they were tall, the b'nai Sion. Sheya mahalchis arucha b'tzad kasara. They would have a tall girl walk next to a short girl, so that the tall girl seemed taller to grab attention. V'tilachlan, the 2 years they walked with an outstretched neck. Garoin sheya mahalchis b'koymis gufa, upright posture, of course, and that's Nia's pose. Umishakri seinayim, and their eyes were gazing. Davim milin kochlainayim, they would put excessive makeup on their eyes in order to attract the guy's attention. They would go and they would spray. What does that mean? They put the heel by their feet. What does that refer to? They would put different perfumes on their shoes. They didn't stop where it's perfume. Real Rishayim. They waited till they got next to young impressionable boys. Talmidei Chachamim b'chayrim, b'achrim, bayatais. They would kick their feet, umatizes aleim, and the venom and the perfume would shoot onto the boys. Umachlisim em yitzaran. Inside these boys, these young single kids, they would, after being sprayed by perfume by these immodest women walking by, the yitzhara would go inside these boys, ke'eres, like a venom. B'chayis shvichai b'kais. with an angry venom. And that was what it refers to, that they were over in Gilead Arayis. They unfortunately caused people to do these terrible averis. And the third of the sins was Shvichas Damim, says the Gemara D'chsev, and even innocent blood in Menashe spilled a lot of it till the entire Yerushalayim from end to end was filled with blood. And those are the three terrible sins, the three cardinal averis. Performed, committed by the people in the first base of Mikdash. The Gemara continues, but the second base of Mikdash, they were learning Torah. They were doing mitzvahs. So why was it destroyed? Of course, we know the answer. They had baseless hatred. How important we have to be, and what a beautiful limud for this time of year, the time of Svira, the time to work on bin Adam Lachaverai. How important it has to be shkula sinas chinam, hating someone for no reason, baseless hatred, or unwarranted hatred. Of course, always a reason, but not a good reason why you caused such a fight. Keneged shalosh aveiros is as bad as the three aveiros chamurais. Avodah rayis is shvichas damim. That's how terrible baseless hatred is. The Gemara comments, Rishayim hayu. These Rishayim el shetolu b'tchayim b'Hakadosh Baruch Hu. They were Rishayim, it's true, but they put their trust in Hashem. And the Gemara explains, As in the Mikdash Shirisha, you know that's referred to the first base of Mikdash. Even though they committed the worst of crimes, they still trusted in God. They had their betachon. T'chsev Rashel b'sheichet yishpaitu. The pasuk says their heads judged for the bribes, and they sold that their profits for money, and bekesef. Yet, what does the pasuk conclude? Val Hashem Yishanu. Even though they were doing all these aveiros, it's a bit of a machlekes. Some Rishonim learned that this pasuk is referring to other aveiros that they did. But yet, Val Hashem Yishanu leimar al Hashem b'karbeinu lo sava aleinu ra. Still, they feared God, and nothing bad is going to befall them. Lefikach, because of their aveiros, Hakadosh Baruch Hu gimel gzeiros, kenegel gimel aveiros shaviyadim. Again, whether this means referring back to the original three, the aveiros chamuros, but azar girais and shvichas damim, or it's referred to a different set of averos, but either way, Hashem gave three punishments. Shenemar, it says in the Torah, Lachein beglalachem, Tzion sadet techarish, V'Yushalayim in tia, V'Arabayis labamais, Yair. Says the Gemara, there were three punishments that were given, that Tzion b'tzadet techarish, that Tzion, Yerushalayim is going to be plowed over, Yerushalayim, Ayayin Tia is going to go into ruins, and Harabayis, Lebamais Yar, and the Harabayis is going to be like a forest. The three terrible punishments for the different Aveiros that they committed. Ask the Gemara, we just said, Beis HaMikdash Shvisha in three Aveiros. Beis HaMikdash Sheni Sinas Chinam. Ask the Gemara in the last medium-sized line, Beis Shvisha Lavi Beis Sinas Chinam. There was no Sinas Chinam by the first Beis HaMikdash. How can he say that? Vaksiv the pasuk says, Migayri El Charev Hayu. That the pasuk says that they feared the sword and therefore they hit on their thighs. What does this mean? Rav Elazar explains, people, they eat together, and they drink together. But yet, I said that wrong. Even though they're eating and drinking together, but they stab each other with their tongues, obviously referring to Lashon Hara, they would speak about each other. We see that even during the first base of Mikdash, asked the Gemara, there was sinas chinam. Answers the Gemara, it's true. There was sinas chinam, but rather, it wasn't all of Klal Yisrael, just the leaders, which of course is terrible, but it wasn't the entire Klal Yisrael. You would think that's referring to Ziek v'Hillel, everyone's crying out. No, Tamalai Marki b'chol Nesiah Yisrael. It's totally referred to the Nesiah, the leaders of Klal Yisrael. So there was sinas chinam, but it wasn't everyone. Therefore, the cause of the Beis Hamikdash were the other Aveiros Chamurais. Says the Gemara, a bit more of a comparison between the first and second Beis Hamikdash, third wide line. Rishayim sheniskalu avainam niskalu katzam. the earlier generations, their sin was revealed. They did it in the open, which of course is a terrible thing, but also shows they were consistent. They just did have eros. So Niskalu Katsam, their end was revealed. Yirmiyahu foretold prophecy that 70 years after the Golus Bavel will be redeemed. But Achrainin, the latter ones, they sit in private. They walk around as if they're doing like the Gemara said, by the second Beis Hamikdash. They learned, they did the mitzvahs, they did chesed. Yeah, what were they doing in their houses? They were doing terrible averos. That's even worse. Loi niskalu katzam, their ends were not revealed, and unfortunately we're still in the second galus. We see at some level it's not good to do averos in public, but the worst thing is to be a two-faced person. Don't look all great, but do averos. So of course, if you look great, if we're sitting and learning together, then let's try to work on ourselves and not do terrible averos. Like Rav Pam told that kohen when he said, "How could I duchen my hands that are machal Shabbos?" He said the opposite. He said, hands that duchen. How could he be Machal Shabbos? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yechanan. Taiva, Sipayrin shall Rishayim make crease shall Achrayim. The Sipayrin, the fingernail of earlier generations, even greater than the crease, the abdomen of the latter generations. Amar Rish Lakish, Adarabba, Achrayim Adifa. Aval Gab, Diga Shivon Malchius, Koski Batayra. Says Rish Lakish, I don't get it. We're much better. We have everyone breathing down our neck, and yet we still learn. Amar Lehi responded, Bira Techiach, the Bira, the Bira, which is referring to the Beis Hamikdash, proves. What does it prove? Shachazal Rishayim leChazal Achrayim. The first Beis Hamikdash was brought back by the second one, but after the second destruction, we're still waiting for it to return. Shalos Rav Elazar Rishayim Gedolim Achrayim Gedolim. As Rav Elazar, a similar thing, who is greater? The earlier, latter generations are Melahem. Look at the Beis Hamikdash. Which one was worse? The first one only lost its roof. The second one, the entire Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Obviously, the earlier generations were better. The Bira, the Beis Hamikdash is your Eidos. That what? The first one was destroyed but came back. But again, the second one, unfortunately, we're still waiting. And we're going to conclude with one final story. Rish Lakish was bathing, swimming in the Yarden. Also, Rabbi Rachana, who's from Bavel, came Yav LeYadin. Rabbi Rachana sees Rish Lakish, and he sticks out his hand to help him out of the water. Amar Le Elokos and Inalacha. Rish Lakish tells Rabbi Rachana, God hates you. Whoa. T'chsev Im Chayme Yinevne Aleh Tiras Kesef. The pasuk says, if you're going to be like a wall, build silver crowns. Then Deles, if you're like a door, Hinatzer Aleh. Luach Eres. Then you're like a cedar panel. And now we explain, if you make yourself like a wall, which refers to what? Everyone should have went up. After Golus Bavel, Ezra went up there to Yisrael to build the Beis Hamikdash. And unfortunately, people stayed back in Bavel. Says Rish Lakish, like you, Rabbi Rav Chana, why are you still in Bavel? You should have went up there to Yisrael. So then, Imshaltem Kakasef. If everyone would have went up, then you would have been like silver shein rakav shalei boy, that it doesn't decay. Achshav shalisim kidalaslis, you made yourself like a door that shenim shaltav kares, then you're like a cedar sharkiv shalei boy that you're gonna decay. My erez amrulik sas migar, my sas migar amravaba baskol. It's a baskol. It's referred to the wormwood that the worm is going to eat away out the wood, and that's because you did not go up to Eretz Yisrael. Ketanya has learned in a brayso. B'shemeisen Aviyim Achrayim in the last Aviyim died Chagis Chariv Malachai. Nisalka Ruach HaKodesh, no Ruach HaKodesh. Yisrael. But Daini Mishameshesh B'Baskol, but there still was the Baskol. Says the Gemara. End of story. Tells Rish Lakish is rebuked Rabbi Rachana how you should have came up, and that could have potentially built the second base, built the Beis Hamikdash forever. For Rish Lakish, Mimishtai Ba'ad Rabbi Rachana. First, the Gemara is bothered by the story. Rish Lakish, the great Rish Lakish, is talking to Rabbi Rachana. What do you mean? Umar, Rav Elazar Damar Dar Yisrael. Rav Elazar, who was the chief of Eretz Yisrael, yet Haviv Loi Mishtay Rish Lakish Badei. Rish Lakish wouldn't talk to him. Why? Demand the Mishtay Rish Lakish Badei B'Shaik Yavle Iska B'Loi Sadei. Just talking and being seen, talking to the great Rish Lakish was so great that people would lend you money without eidos, without witnesses. So Rish Lakish was very careful who he spoke to, and he didn't even speak to Rabbi Elazar. So it's possible he's talking to Rabbi Rachana. Rabbi Rachana explains the Gemara. Amar Abba Shadi Gavra Benayu. You're right. Let's switch up the names. Rish Lakish Have Uziiri. Rish Lakish was was bathing in his ear. He pulled him out. Rabbi Chana, Rabbi Lazar. So that's the story. Now the Gemara just concludes. They said, is that really the reason? You said it's because Klal Yisrael didn't all go up from Galus Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. Is that really the reason? Shani, it's not true. You're telling me that if they all would have went up, then the Beis Hamikdash would have stayed. It's not true. The Chsev, as the pasuk says, Yavta Elikim liyefes v'yishkon olei shem, that Hashem's going to grant beauty to Yefes and He's going to dwell in the olei shem. Moving along to Yod Amar Aleph, and we conclude Avalgav the Yefes Elikim liyefes Yavta Elikim liyefes ina shchina sheira ela ba'olei shem. The shchina is only going to dwell in the Olei Shem, which is the first Beis Hamikdash. So it says Rabbi Yechon to Reish Lakish, it's nice, it's true, everyone should have went up with Ezra, but that's not the reason why the Shechina is not in the second Beis Hamikdash. Wouldn't have been there either way, and we're going to pick it up from over here tomorrow.